At least 11 people dead after a bridge collapses in central China's Henan province, thought to have been caused by the explosion of a truck carrying fireworks. Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe to visit Okinawa Prefecture to discuss the relocation of the US Marine Corps' Futenma Air Station. South Korean military authorities say they've seen signs that a nuclear test in the DPRK is imminent. And a suicide bomber attacks the US embassy in the Turkish capital Ankara, killing a local guard and wounding others. Ni hao, thanks for joining us for News Hour, 60 minutes of the latest stories from China and around the world. I'm Edwin Ma in Beijing. In our top story at this hour, at least 11 people have been killed in an expressway bridge collapse in Sanmenxia in central China's Henan province. An initial investigation indicates that the collapse was caused by the explosion of a truck carrying fireworks. Jenny Lin has more details.
The truck laden with fireworks was passing over a section of a bridge when it exploded. An 80-meter-long section of the bridge collapsed after the explosion. The force of the blast caused a dozen vehicles traveling on the bridge to fall 30 meters. A rescue team rushed to the scene and are racing against time to search for survivors.
6 trucks and 2 cars have been pulled from the debris by the rescuers. 9 people have been confirmed dead and 11 others have been injured. The injured are separately receiving medical treatment in 4 hospitals. 4 of them are in serious condition. Further search and rescue efforts remain underway.
Search and rescue efforts continued through the night, although the complicated situation made the work difficult. The first batch of about 200 rescuers, aided by 3 cranes, are sifting through the debris. Local medical teams are on standby.
We are waiting for the rescue. We will not leave here until the rescuers finish their work.
Investigation is still underway to determine the exact cause. The bridge collapse is being blamed on the fireworks truck explosion, but it's been suggested the collapse may have set the explosion off. The affected section of the expressway has been cordoned off, and extra traffic police are on duty to help divert traffic. Jenny Lin, CCTV.
And later in News Hour, we'll be crossing to our reporter Ning Hong, who is at the scene of that collapse, and he'll be bringing us up to date with a very live report. But first of all, we're going to another story now, which is also causing problems for authorities here in China. At least 6 people have been rescued after a reservoir dam collapsed in northwest China's Xinjiang Uyghur Autonomous Region. The local fire department said the collapse took place in Qidao County in the Urumqi municipality this morning. Firefighters rescued 6 of the victims from the reservoir. Homes near it were flooded after the accident, but the water level has receded. The rescue operation is continuing. Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe has arrived in Okinawa Prefecture today, his first trip since taking office in late December. Abe is scheduled to hold talks with Okinawa Governor Hirokazu Nakayama and other officials on the relocation of the US Marine Corps' Futenma Air Station and other key issues. Abe will visit the United States in the second half of February. By going to Okinawa, Abe aims to show consideration to local opponents of the plan to transfer the Futenma base in Ginowan to another site in the same prefecture. So let's get an explanation of what is exactly going on with this trip. We have our correspondent Vincent Turame with us, joining us in Tokyo. Welcome, Vincent. Why is Shinzo Abe visiting Okinawa Prefecture at this time? Just explain to us, if you will, what's going on, the politics and the reality of it all.
Well, it was important for Shinzo Abe to visit Okinawa before meeting with Barack Obama in Washington later this month. His trip there is scheduled for February 21st and 22nd. The U.S. are Japan's main ally, military ally in the Asia-Pacific region, and Abe always said that its priority was to strengthen its alliance with the U.S. once in office. He needs to show some progress is being made on the Futenma Air Base relocation issue that has been dragging for years. Shinzo Abe has always criticized the previous administration for its handling of the issue. His goal is to stick to the original agreement to move the base from Futenma to another part of the island called Henoko, an agreement that was reached in 2006 when Abe's LDP party was in power. The Prime Minister is already in Okinawa. Even as we speak, he arrived there this morning and started to visit to inspect a self-defense force air base in Naha, the island's biggest city. He's expected to visit the Futenma air base later in the afternoon, then meets with local officials, including Okinawa's governor. As you said, he will also meet with the mayors of Futenma.
South Korea's military believes the DPRK has camouflaged tunnels entrances to protect them from satellite surveillance. It is in a process of analyzing a satellite image of a vehicle that looks like a command control vehicle, which is used to remotely detonate a nuclear device. The DPRK is also believed to have installed radiation detectors around the test site. South Korea's military believes that last stage of DPRK's nuclear test preparation may be concluded in 1 or 2 days. Jiebai, CCTV.
Well, together with South Korea, the United States is strengthening its monitoring and intelligence gathering efforts on the DPRK's nuclear activities. Japan's NHK broadcaster reports that the U.S. has deployed reconnaissance planes carrying high-sensitivity detection devices on Okinawa's military base. The aircraft are used to gather radioactive materials which are produced by nuclear tests and floating in the atmosphere. South Korea has dispatched aircraft for observation, reconnaissance planes carrying audio monitoring devices, and early warning airplanes to keep track on the DPRK's activities. The UK Ministry of Defence has published its equipment spending plan for the next 10 years for the first time. The ministry said it will spend £160 billion procuring new military equipment. That figure is a £10 billion increase on the previous equipment budget figure released in March 2012. Defence Secretary Philip Hammond said the armed forces will have a substantial equipment plan, or a sustainable equipment plan rather, for the first time in a generation. But although Hammond described the plan as the new equipment as being affordable, it became clear that the UK's defence budget will not be spared a further round of spending cuts for 2015 to 2016 across all government departments that is now deemed necessary because of the country's poor economic performance. This is NewsHour here at CCTV News, and in the stories coming up. A suicide bomber attacks the US Embassy in the Turkish capital Ankara, killing a local guard and wounding others. And Mexico City begins 3 days of mourning after the blast at the headquarters of state-owned oil company Pemex, killing at least 33 people. And this is NewsHour here at CCTV News. We're going back to our lead story now, in which we told you that 11 people have been killed in an expressway bridge collapse in Sanmencha in central China's Henan province. Our reporter is Ning Hong. He joins us from the scene. He's actually in Mianchur County. And Ning Hong, the scene behind you when we spoke to you earlier was pretty horrific, just like a war zone. What's happening there now?
Yes, there are some updates with numbers. As you know, two more dead bodies was pulled out from the rubbles since last night. So the total death toll now has risen to 11. As of at now we're at the scene, and we can see the cranes are still trying to clean the wreckage of cars, and the rescue teams have moved in to conduct more searches, mainly about the identities of the vehicles and the victims. And also, now we have managed to retrieve 12 plates from the scene. They are from the vehicles that plunged down from the building down from the bridge. What I have now is the number of those vehicles. As you can see, there are 12 plates, but belongs to 8 vehicles because 2 of them are large vehicles with 2 plates, and also in the middle the plate means A053. This is the vehicle that carries 10 cars, 10 brand new cars. So this is also why there are so many cars at the scene, but actually almost half of them are just the cargoes. Edwin.
It's an incredible scene there, Ning Hong, and the rescuers and obviously the recovery people are going to be there for a long time to come. This expressway connects the 2 major cities of Xi'an and Zhengzhou, and we're now, of course, in the middle of the Spring Festival rush with many people heading home. So that is a problem, of course, on its own. How is the local government managing the traffic hold-ups?
Yes, the bridge belongs to a very busy highway. Because now the road's been cut off, the pressure on the roads nearby is very huge. And the government has arranged the cars to travel on other highways in this area, and also more hands were sent to keep the traffic in order in the State Route 310, which has been under huge pressure after the accident happened. And also, I've got information that more temporary trains were added in this area to share the burden of the traffic. Because this is during China's most busy time of the year, because it's just the days before China's Lunar New Year, and
4 people were killed, including U.S. Ambassador Christopher Stevens. 10 others were injured. 2 days later, Yemeni security officials said 4 protesters were killed in Yemen after hundreds of demonstrators stormed the U.S. embassy in the capital city of Sana'a. Dozens were reportedly injured. On September the 14th, at least 2 people were killed and 29 others wounded when police fought hundreds of protesters who ransacked the U.S. embassy in Tunisia. They were expressing their fury over the film denigrating the Prophet Muhammad. Mexico City has begun 3 days of official mourning after a blast that ripped through the lower floors of the headquarters of the state-owned oil company Pemex, killing at least 33 people. Some 46 others remain in hospital, gravely injured. President Enrique Pena Nieto has called on the state oil giant to provide full medical care to the victims.
We have asked the General Director of Pemex, who is with me, to be alert in order to give the victims timely attention, both to those receiving medical attention and those who unfortunately lost their lives.
The blast at the oil giant's downtown tower on Thursday injured over 120 people. The blast shattered the lower floors, throwing debris into the streets and sending frightened workers running outside. Emergency workers are continuing to look through the site, trying to find more people who may be trapped in the rubble. Authorities have promised a thorough investigation. The cause of the explosion is still unknown. President Nieto has visited the site and urged people not to speculate on the cause. Well, Pemex has not had a very good recent track record of accidents. Earlier, our correspondent Frank Contreras in Mexico City explained how, being the state's oil giant, the importance Pemex holds for Mexico's economy and what this latest incident means to the company.
Now, the Pemex national oil company accounts for somewhere around 1/3 of the country's full federal budget. So you can see it's extremely important. Pemex is producing now about 2.5 million barrels of crude oil per day. That makes it one of the top oil producers in the entire world, one of the 4 top producers. And of course, it is one of the main exporters of crude to the United States, and so it is a main player in the world petroleum industry, and for that reason there are many people who would like to see improvements made to this company that's been struggling with issues of corruption inside its ranks, but also theft. We're told that there are actually members, state-run oil company employees who have been involved with organized crime groups, and they've been siphoning off oil, sending it off to criminal organizations here in the country. So there's a whole lot of work that needs to be done to bring Pemex back to the kind of company that it ought to be.
It's our correspondent in Mexico City, Frank Contreras. The European Union's diplomatic chief, Catherine Ashton, has met German Foreign Minister Guido Westerwelle in Berlin, ahead of the Munich Security Conference, which opens this weekend. Both expressed their willingness to have dialogue with Iran over its nuclear program. The talks, which include the 5 permanent members of the Security Council plus Germany, are tentatively set for next month, with a date and venue still open. Meanwhile, IAEA experts are scheduled to visit Tehran on February 13th in their more than year-long effort to restart the probe of the weapons allegations.
We need to take all opportunities to try and ensure not just that we have dialogue, but that dialogue leads to lasting certainty with Iran on the nature of their nuclear program. And as you know, I have spent many hours, days, in discussion with them. And I really do hope that we will see change, that we will see progress in these coming weeks and months. This European direction.
The willingness for direct talks, this is a hand extended to the Iranian government. And in our talks, we will urge the Iranian government to take up this offer that the Americans have made. It is important now to find a diplomatic solution, a political solution, to put everything into this and to make it possible to pave the way.
Russia has denied that its representatives were planning to participate in a 4-party meeting on Syria on the sidelines of the ongoing 49th Security Conference in Munich. Deputy Foreign Minister Gennady Gatilov said in a social media post that the reports do not correspond with reality. He also said that such a meeting is not on the Foreign Minister's schedule at the moment. Some Western media had reported that representatives of the US, UN Arab League, Syria and Russia would meet during the conference, which discusses global hotspot issues such as the situation in Mali, Syria and the Eurozone crisis. Well, still with the Syrian conflict, officials in Syria have held a meeting after Israel's airstrike on the Syrian-Lebanese border. The cabinet says the attack is a violation of Syria's sovereignty, but a Syrian political analyst claims the airstrike does not mean Israel has begun to intervene in Syria's domestic situation. Yuan Yifang has more.
Headed by Syrian Prime Minister Wael al-Haqi, the cabinet said Israel's raid was an act of aggression and its timing indicated cooperation between Israel and armed rebels. Haqi has called on Syrians to unite against this form of aggression. The cabinet issued a statement condemning Wednesday's attack, calling it a danger to regional stability. Syria's foreign ministry summoned the leader of the UN Disengagement Observer Force on Thursday and filed an official complaint. It's called for the UN to take immediate measures and says it reserves the right to retaliate. A Syrian political analyst says the airstrike is not surprising, as the Israeli government has carried out sudden attacks in the past when it's perceived potential threats to its security. He believes the action does not indicate Israel has begun to intervene in the Syrian conflict.
The Israeli government intended to achieve some kind of goal through the incident. Benjamin Netanyahu's government has failed in many operations launched in the Gaza Strip and southern Lebanon. Israel was aiming to contain any perceived threat to its security.
He added that the Syrian government is most likely to put pressure on Israel through political channels and is not likely to use force, as the military has made no mention of a possible retaliation. The Syrian military says Wednesday's airstrike destroyed a military research facility in the Jamaya suburb of the Syrian capital. but the Western officials say the airstrike targeted a convoy carrying sophisticated anti-aircraft weaponry from Syria to Lebanon's Hezbollah. Yuan Yifang, CCTV.
Thousands of protesters denouncing Egypt's Islamist president have marched on his palace in Cairo, clashing with security forces on the 8th day of the country's latest wave of political violence. Around 6,000 protesters massed outside Mohamed Morsi's presidential palace on Friday, some throwing rocks and petrol bombs. Security forces responded by firing water cannons to drive back the crowd, then volleys of tear gas. Police said at least 15 people were injured. Protests were also held in Alexandria and other cities around the country over the past week, around 60 people having been killed in riots and clashes that engulfed the country in its worst crisis since Hosni Mubarak's fall in 2011. The latest wave began around rallies marking the second anniversary of the unrest that toppled Mubarak. Foreign ministers from all 27 EU member states met in Brussels on Thursday for a meeting that focused on Mali. It came ahead of a major international summit on the country to be held in Brussels next week. Somalia's new president also attended, having already secured further commitments from the EU in training the Somali army and anti-piracy operations. CCTV's Jack Barton reports.
More than a dozen European Union nations are now committed to sending forces to Mali as part of the EU's training mission, though no decision has yet been reached on which ranks should be trained or even if it should target seasoned soldiers or new recruits. Financial assistance is also dependent on Mali's government officially agreeing to work towards becoming a constitutional democracy, which has not happened yet. Gathered in Brussels on Thursday, EU officials insisted they would seek agreements on these areas at a major meeting on Mali to be held in Brussels next week.
That meeting will reinforce international cooperation, support the concrete implementation of the roadmap, and follow up the International Donors Conference at which the European Union announced a contribution of €50 million.
Somalia's new president, Hassan Sheikh Mahmoud, also attended the foreign ministers' meeting, as well as addressing the European Parliament for the first time, laying out Somalia's significant progress while highlighting the challenges ahead. President Mahmoud stressed that though stability is returning to his country, much needs to be done, especially in terms of security, reforming the judiciary and education.
75% of our children, they do not go to school. They play in the streets. And the consequences of these 75% that are out of school, the initial indications are already in place. That's piracy and that's terrorism.
The Somali president's visit has been widely seen as a great success and is also now being viewed as a potential model of what might be achieved in Mali.
President Mahmoud next heads to Britain, all part of a tour that one EU official described as a highly significant shift in the way the world now sees Somalia and how Somalia sees the rest of the world. Jack Barton, CCTV, Brussels.
Outgoing US Secretary of State Hillary Clinton has given a farewell address to her colleagues as she stepped down from her post. Speaking before a cheering crowd at the State Department building in Washington, Clinton thanked everyone for their hard work, saying she's pleased with their accomplishments.
But I'm proud of the work we've done to elevate diplomacy and development, to serve the nation we all love, to understand the challenges, the threats, and the opportunities that the United States faces, and to work with all our heart and all of our might to make sure that America is secure, that our interests are promoted, and our values are respected.
Clinton also struck a somber tone when she mentioned Friday's attack on the US Embassy in Ankara. A suicide bomber killed a Turkish security guard when he detonated his explosives outside an entrance to the building. Finally, Clinton ended her speech by encouraging her fellow diplomats to continue to make themselves, as well as their country, proud. Clinton's departure marks the end of over 3 decades of public service. She has filled the roles of First Lady, Senator and Secretary of State. She also ran for president against the current President Barack Obama during the 2008 Democratic primaries. You're watching NewsHour, and we have more stories coming your way. China's National Bureau of Statistics announces a PMI figure of 50.4 for January, suggesting the economic recovery still faces challenges. And we'll be reporting from Thailand, where some people are concerned its buoyant economic bubble could burst. Welcome back. You're watching NewsHour. We're coming to you from Beijing. China's official PMI numbers for the month of January are out. The latest figures from China's National Bureau of Statistics show that factory activity last month moderated to 50.4, still above the expansionary mark, but coming in below market expectations. This is causing some analysts to say China's economic recovery still faces some challenges.
50.4 is China's January PMI figure, suggesting a modest revival in manufacturing activity. Although it holds above the 50 benchmark separating growth from contraction, it is down from the 50.6 number seen in December. Analysts had forecast a 9-month high of 50.9.
The main reason of the drop is the decrease in production output.
Tsai says the production slowdown was due to seasonal factors, such as firms gradually cutting production ahead of the Spring Festival next week. The NBS says that those manufacturers focusing on domestic demand were outperforming in January, while those active in electronics and shipping fared the most. A positive trend in January's data, however, the new order index rose to 51.6, the highest reading since last May. But risks, especially posed by softer external demand, are still persisting.
There are some uncertainties in the global economy. Countries such as the United States and some in the EU all showed a sluggish trend.
Analysts, however, remain optimistic for the next couple of months as the overall index stayed above the 50 level, expecting that new infrastructure projects and improving labor market conditions will boost consumer spending also after the Chinese New Year. Quan Xiangqing, CCTV.
Other analysts attribute the surprise drop in the official PMI to the change in the size of the survey, which quadrupled to 3,000 companies from a previous 820 firms across 31 sectors. Now, still here in China, and the country plans to postpone the expansion of a pilot program imposing property taxes. That's according to the official China Securities Journal. The report cited anonymous official sources who also said China intends to keep a tight curb on the property market because it is still not mature enough to handle wider implementation of the tax. The complexity of the residential market and a lack of clarity of property rights were two major reasons for the decision. At present, China is implementing a property tax on a trial basis in only 2 municipalities, Shanghai and Chongqing, which aims to cool rising home prices. Analysts say the government might tighten mortgage policies for second home buyers or increase personal income taxes on transactions of pre-owned homes in big cities to curb price increases. Thailand has insulated itself from some of the ravages of the global economic downturn, but there are concerns that the buoyant economic bubble could burst, as it did with devastating consequences in 1997, leading to the Asian economic crisis. Tony Chang reports from Bangkok.
It's an early morning start for Mint, but the commute to work is now much easier. At the end of last year, she purchased her first car with the help of a government stimulus package that saw the price reduced by almost 15%. Now many of her friends are taking loans to do the same.
I've got lots of friends who are now taking bank loans to buy cars under this policy.
In the past 12 months, car purchases have increased by a stunning 81%, with 1.4 million new cars hitting the roads of Thailand. And no signs of the global slowdown in Bangkok, where the property market is booming too. Another government scheme is helping house buyers get easy credit. Construction is at record levels, as are loans. Many in the property market are beginning to get concerned that although the banks are lending more responsibly, supply now far exceeds demand. Memories are still fresh of the crash in 1997 that saw the Thai baht collapse and left the country effectively bankrupt.
We're sort of building in anticipation of long-term prosperity, if you like, because there's going to be ASEAN coming on in 2015. But I do see that the boom is slowing, that any developers getting in now are going to, for sure, they're going to live a short ride.
There are also other disturbing signals that Thailand's economy could be overheating.
And it's not just big ticket items like cars and property. In the last 12 months alone, food and fuel have hit record prices across Thailand.
But while the Thai economy may still be in a boom and bust cycle, the experts are convinced that a huge crash can be averted by Thailand's considerable foreign currency reserves.
But this time, the situation is different. Now it's a boom and speculation, at the beginning of speculation on real estate, but we have plenty of international reserve this time.
The prospects for the Thai consumer may be rather rocky. The rapid growth of the past 12 months is unlikely to continue and a readjustment is expected. But the economy is much more mature than it was 15 years ago, and bumps in the road should be easily overcome. Tony Cheng, CCTV, Bangkok.
Well, now to the US, where employment grew modestly in January, with factory output there touching a 9-month high. That supports views the economy's mild recovery remains on track. Other data released on Friday also suggested that the surprise contraction in economic activity in the past 3 months of 2012 was not a trend. 2 of the nation's big automakers reported better than expected sales last month. The Labour Department said non-agricultural payrolls rose by 157,000 last month, and revisions showed 127,000 more jobs created in November and December than previously reported. Annual revisions also showed the labour market in 2012 was a bit more healthy than initially thought. The unemployment rate rose 0.1% to 7.9%. Average hourly earnings went up 4 cents last month and were up 2.1% in the 12 months through January. The world's largest mining investment event, the African Mining Indaba, is set to kick off in Cape Town, South Africa next week. The event has been running for 19 years now and attracts thousands of investors and other interested parties from 100 countries. Our reporter Angelo Coppola went to snap a preview.
Indaba in February will focus on key issues facing the mining industry, both in South Africa and the region. Andy Clay, MD of Wendmann Deloitte, provides some context.
There's been quite a lot of trouble that's been highlighted in the international press in South Africa. There's been many problems elsewhere, also in Africa. If you look at the rebel activity in the DRC, gold mining and copper operations up there are potentially compromised by the troubles. So it's just definitely not just the issues to do with South Africa.
Nationalisation or resource nationalism is not unique to South Africa. It can be found in varying degrees in many countries, but the lack of policy clarity means that investors increasingly are considering other options.
Probably what's happened here is that the general issues that you've spoken about just add to the general level of uncertainty. And frankly, that uncertainty is not being dispelled by the discussions that are being presented by government. I don't think anybody really believes what is being said to the extent they'll make their own decisions. I mean, let's face it, the junior mining sector in South Africa is not particularly buoyant. The platinum industry in itself is going through major trauma.
Neil McKenna, director at Wendmann Deloitte, is a regular attendee to the Indaba and says that each one focuses on topical issues and pressures of the day, from the 2008 financial crisis to the nationalisation debate and more recently industrial labour disruptions.
South Africa is going to lose out in terms of investment. So for me, it's an opportunity to get a better feel for what the general investment community think about South Africa. And even though Indaba isn't specifically focusing on South Africa is still seen as a springboard to the rest of Africa.
South Africa remains an important focal point for continental mining, specifically for investors from the Far East, and this is probably going to remain so for the foreseeable future.
The annual Mining Indaba takes place in Cape Town, but much of the attention will be focused on the region, and especially those resource-rich countries that are looking for interest and looking for foreign direct investment. I'm Angelo Coppola for CCTV in Johannesburg.
Now, we've just received some breaking news of another serious road accident here in China. A coach has fallen down a hill in southwest China's Guizhou province. At least 13 people have been killed, 11 suffering critical injuries, with 10 sustaining minor injuries. It's been revealed the coach is only permitted to carry 19 passengers, but there were 34 people on board when that accident happened. So we'll keep you up to date on further updates here at CCTV News. But for now, let's get the latest in sport, and it's all in the hands of Jonas.
Begin this afternoon with some action from the Chinese Basketball Association. The league-leading Guangdong Southern Tigers had a chance to clinch the regular season crown if they won on Friday night over Liaoning, and second-place Shandong lost. The Southern Tigers looking for a 15th straight win, and the runaway league leaders got off to a quick start of the night. They opened up an early lead at home, but Liaoning's top scorer, Josh Gagnon, would step up to close the gap. He would lead his team on the night. He had a 31-point evening. Now, Liaoning would come back to take the lead at halftime, but Guangdong would then start the run in the second half. Yijian Lian, 11 points and 10 boards for the Southern Tigers on the night. In the fourth quarter, Guangdong would indeed pull away. They take the 112-90 win. That's 15 in a row for the league leaders. With 3 games to go, Guangdong are now 4 games ahead of second-place Shandong, where they did not clinch, as Shandong did win last night. Defending champs from Beijing looking to get their campaign back on track after a couple straight losses. They welcomed in the Dongguan Leopards in Beijing. Would focus on the night on Dongguan import Marcus Hayslip to contain the Leopards' threat, but the visitors would not be able to control Stefan Marbury. The Ducks point guard red hot all night. He would lead the Capital Club with 48 points, led by Starbury. Beijing would pull away for a 118-105 win. They stopped their 2-game losing skid. The Ducks in third place in the CBA, 2 games now behind second place Shandong. And Shandong did pick up that win last night. They stay firm ahead of Beijing. They blew out Jiangsu. They are also in contention for the regular season crown with that victory. Meanwhile, Xinjiang top Shaanxi. They are now contending with Guangshan for the final playoff spot. Both teams at 15 and 14. Fujian got by Jilin, and Zhejiang, who were 15 and 13, held off Tianjin. And Foshan defeated the basement-dwelling Shanghai, and Qingdao fell again, this time to Guangsha. Qingdao's Tracy McGrady was named in the starting lineup for the North for the CBA All-Star Game, had 22 points, added 10 boards, and 8 assists. Well, one day after they surprisingly and perhaps controversially traded away their top scorer, Rudy Gay, the Memphis Grizzlies were at Oklahoma City to take on the Thunder. The Thunder firmly in the hunt to be the best in the West. And Russell Westbrook would nail a jumper to get the Thunder off to a solid start in the opening quarter. Westbrook had 21 points on the night. Kevin Durant also doing his thing. He's going to throw down the huge dunk there. The lead into double digits midway through the second. Durant had 27, none better than that. And OKC will continue to find their stride in the third Q. KD's mid-range jumper going to give them a 20-point advantage. Memphis perhaps missing Rudy Gay. Now Kevin Martin also stepped for OKC. They had a big cushion, and Martin in the corner, wide open, knocks down that 3. This one was all for Thunder, and Durant's jumper late in the final stanza going to seal things pretty much for the Thunder. They were never really threatened in this one, and Kevin Martin will keep it going. Another clutch 3 before the end of this one wrapped up. In the end, the Thunder rolled past Memphis 106-89. The Grizzlies, perhaps missing a piece of the puzzle there. Elsewhere, the Golden State Warriors, the Dallas Mavericks had a good one. Andrew Bogut back in action, his second game back from injury. The big Aussie finally healthy. David Lee going to give the home side a 3-point edge in the second quarter. Knocks down the jumper there. Lee finished with 15 points, a season-high 20 rebounds and 9 dimes. Vince Carter getting in the act. He turns back the clock. A little Vinsanity there, the huge dunk. Klay Thompson also getting it done for Golden State. He had 27 points. The sharpshooter knocking down 2 there. The Warriors on top by 10. Late, Jared Jack would step up, knocks down the triple there. Golden State up by 3, 95-92. And the Mavs would have a chance to tie it, but Vince Carter's late shot off the mark. The Warriors would hold on for a 197 victory. Well, a scary scene in Brazil as a barrier collapsed during a Copa Libertadores match while fans were celebrating a goal in Brazil that left several fans injured. The accident took place when Grêmio was hosting Liga de Quito in the second leg of their first-round match. The accident happened as the fans ran down the stands to celebrate, as they traditionally do, to celebrate a goal, and that caused the barrier to give way. TV footage of the incident in the southern city of Porto Alegre showed several fans being treated for their injuries at the scene. Local media say 8 fans who received minor injuries during the fall were taken to hospital, later released. Grêmio did go on to defeat Liga de Quito 5-4 on penalties. They move on to the second round. The Grêmio Arena will not be one of the soccer stadiums used during the 2014 World Cup, which Brazil will host. The stadium was inaugurated on November 2012. Lots of time for sports here on the News Hour. Full edition of the show coming your way 3:30 p.m. Beijing time. But for now, back to you, Edwin.
All right, many thanks for that, Jonas, and we will see you back later in the day. But for now, that's it for this edition of News Hour. The weather's coming up. I'm Edwin Ma. Thanks for your company. Have a good day or night, wherever you may be, and join us later. Zaijian. So let's get an explanation of what is exactly going on with this trip. We have our correspondent Vincent Turane with us, joining us in Tokyo. Welcome, Vincent. Why is Shinzo Abe visiting Okinawa Prefecture at this time? Just explain to us, if you will, what's going on, the politics and the reality of it all.
Well, it was important for Shinzo Abe to visit Okinawa before meeting with Barack Obama in Washington later this month. His trip there is scheduled for February 21st and 22nd. The U.S. are Japan's main ally, military ally in the Asia-Pacific region, and Abe always said that its priority was to strengthen its alliance with the U.S. once in office. He needs to show some progress is being made on the Futenma Air Base relocation issue that has been dragging for years. Shinzo Abe has always criticized the previous administration for its handling of the issue. His goal is to stick to the original agreement to move the base from Futenma to another part of the island called Henoko, an agreement that was reached in 2006 when Abe's LDP party was in power. The Prime Minister is already in Okinawa. Even as we speak, he arrived there this morning and started to visit to inspect a self-defense force airbase in Naha, the island's biggest city. He's expected to visit the Futenma airbase later in the afternoon, then meets with local officials, including Okinawa's governor. As you said, he will also meet with the mayors of Futenma.
South Korea's military believes the DPRK has camouflaged tunnels entrances to protect them from satellite surveillance. It is in a process of analyzing a satellite image of a vehicle that looks like a command control vehicle, which is used to remotely detonate a nuclear device. The DPRK is also believed to have installed radiation detectors around the test site. South Korea's military believes that last stage of DPRK's nuclear test preparation may be concluded in 1 or 2 days. Jiebai, CCTV.
Well, together with South Korea, the United States is strengthening its monitoring and intelligence gathering efforts on the DPRK's nuclear activities. Japan's NHK broadcaster reports that the U.S. has deployed reconnaissance planes carrying high-sensitivity detection devices on Okinawa's military base. The aircraft are used to gather radioactive materials, which are produced by nuclear tests and floating in the atmosphere. South Korea has dispatched aircraft for observation, reconnaissance planes carrying audio monitoring devices, and early warning airplanes to keep track on the DPRK's activities. The UK Ministry of Defence has published its equipment spending plan. Has more details.
The truck laden with fireworks was passing over a section of a bridge when it exploded. An 80-meter-long section of the bridge collapsed after the explosion. The force of the blast caused a dozen vehicles traveling on the bridge to fall 30 meters. A rescue team rushed to the scene and are racing against time to search for survivors.
6 trucks and 2 cars have been pulled from the debris by the rescuers. 9 people have been confirmed dead and 11 others have been injured. The injured are separately receiving medical treatment in 4 hospitals. 4 of them are in serious condition. Further search and rescue efforts remain underway.
Search and rescue efforts continued through the night, although the complicated situation made the work difficult. The first batch of about 200 rescuers, aided by 3 cranes, are sifting through the debris. Local medical teams are on standby.
We are waiting for the rescue. We will not leave here until the rescuers finish their work.
Investigation is still underway to determine the exact cause. The bridge collapse is being blamed on the fireworks truck explosion, but it's been suggested the collapse may have set the explosion off. The affected section of the expressway has been cordoned off, and extra traffic police are on duty to help divert traffic. Jenny Lin, CCTV.
And later in NewsHour, we'll be crossing to our reporter Ning Hong, who is at the scene of that collapse, and he'll be bringing us up to date with a very live report. But first of all, we're going to another story now, which is also causing problems for authorities here in China. At least 6 people have been rescued after a reservoir dam collapsed in northwest China's Xinjiang Uyghur Autonomous Region. The local fire department said the collapse took place in Qidao County in the Urumqi municipality this morning. Firefighters rescued 6 of the victims from the reservoir. Homes near it were flooded after the accident, but the water level has receded. The rescue operation is continuing. Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe has arrived in Okinawa Prefecture today, his first trip since taking office in late December. Abe is scheduled to hold talks with Okinawa Governor Hirokazu Nakayama and other officials on the relocation of the U.S. Marine Corps' Futenma Air Station and other key issues. Abe will visit the United States in the second half of February. By going to Okinawa, Abe aims to show consideration to local opponents of the plan to transfer the Futenma base in Ginowan to another site in the same prefecture. At least 11 people dead after a bridge collapses in central China's Henan province, thought to have been caused by the explosion of a truck carrying fireworks. Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe to visit Okinawa Prefecture to discuss the relocation of the U.S. Marine Corps' Futenma Air Station. South Korean military authorities say they've seen signs that a nuclear test in the DPRK is imminent. And a suicide bomber attacks the U.S. Embassy in the Turkish capital Ankara, killing a local guard and wounding others. Ni hao, thanks for joining us for News Hour, 60 minutes of the latest stories from China and around the world. I'm Edwin Ma in Beijing. In our top story at this hour, at least 11 people have been killed in an expressway bridge collapse in Sanmenxia in central China's Henan province. An initial investigation indicates that the collapse was caused by the explosion of a truck carrying fireworks. Jenny Lin